For today's leadership video, I'm filming outside the famed courthouse in downtown Waxahachie. This is the Ellis County Courthouse. The county courthouse is just emblematic of the American jurisprudence world, where the view in America is that you settle your disputes with your neighbors, if it's a civil matter, or you settle the disputes with your neighbors in terms of criminal trial by going through a process. Police are involved, investigators are involved, prosecuting attorneys, defense attorneys. You have a right to certain level of criminal defense. You have a right to a certain type of trial, including by peers to be heard, have your trial heard by your peers, a trial by jury. And all of these things are an intent to keep you from, or me from, taking the law into my own hands. That a lawless society has a situation where this type of thing is skipped, and we had right to being the judge and jury and executioner in a situation where we feel we've been wronged or someone else has been wronged. Jesus is traveling in a certain region in Samaria, and they're ultimately now starting to head towards his final destiny of the city of Jerusalem and the cross. And when they get to Samaria, there's this interesting encounter where Jesus's disciples notice that the local citizens reject his presence there. They run him out of town. And the disciples, a couple of disciples come to Jesus and they ask something that is really striking. They ask something where they say to Jesus, "Jesus, this group has unjustly rejected you. Would you like for us to call fire and brimstone out of heaven and destroy the whole lot of them?" And this is a really surprising statement. The desire of these two disciples to suddenly wipe out the Samaritan community in an instant, as if they are now suddenly the final authority, or asking Jesus for final authority to execute divine judgment on them. In doing so, they are basically taking on the role of God there. And Jesus rebukes them, and he basically shuts that all down, that their desire for instantaneous justice is misplaced. And it's misplaced probably for a couple of reasons. Number one is that there is a redemptive aspect in Samaria later on. As you know, the church in Acts chapter 8 springs to life in Samaria. Philip goes to Samaria. He presents the gospel of Jesus Christ. They believe. Could it be that some of the people that believe in this moment in Acts chapter 8 would have been victims of this divine vigilante justice, whatever you want to call it, by the disciples to invoke God and their anger over their sense of injustice toward Jesus? They want to invoke fire and brimstone out of heaven. Could they have even destroyed some of the individuals that later become pillars in the early church, individuals they would later come and pray with and sing songs with and things like that? The second thing that we see here, and this involves an aspect of spiritual leadership, that when injustice happens, when there's a sense that this situation is unjust or that situation is unjust, this person's acted unjustly, is that there's a temptation for us to take on authority that's not our own. And we'll see this even in a home, where parents of multiple kids will have to say to the oldest child, "Let me parent." Because what will happen is that the younger sibling or younger siblings will do something, and the oldest sibling will suddenly start to take on, the 10-year-old's now going to parent the 7-year-old, and to parent them at a level that is well beyond just an older sibling trying to encourage a younger sibling. And a parent will have to say to this older sibling, "Let me parent. You're taking on authority that's not your own." And I think that's what happens here, is that Jesus rebukes his disciples. They're trying to take on authority that is not theirs. So one of the battles in the realm of spiritual leadership is this issue of taking on authority that's not properly ours. And in spiritual leadership, when someone takes authority that's not theirs, we get in trouble. For instance, if someone in the courtroom today just randomly stood up and said, "I don't care what the judge says or the jury or what any of these attorneys say, this is what I think should happen." And they grab the defendant and they say, "He's released," or they grab the defendant and say, "I'm taking him to jail right now. He gets life in prison." And hopefully immediately the bailiff would intervene, because this person would have taken authority to themselves that's not theirs. with the desire to help, they're actually causing more harm than good by taking authority that is not theirs. Much like the disciples did on that day to say to Jesus, hey, do you want us to take on this task of bringing judgment in this case? And Jesus' response isn't, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I'm so glad you guys are here to help me think more clearly on this. No, instead Jesus rebukes them because they've stepped into a realm that's not theirs. And so we'll see this in church, workplace, family. I see it in sports. We'll see it in a situation where a pitcher's pitching and a player makes an error behind them. And the pitcher comes off the field. It's like if shortstop could just field a ground ball. And the attitude of the baseball player in that moment creates disunity across the whole team. Number one is the public calling out of this individual, the calling of fire and brimstone down on them. But number two is that's not their role. Their role is to throw the next pitch. Their role is to get the next batter. The role of the shortstop is next pitch, field the next ground ball. The role of the coach may be to address that and should be done in a way that's just and fair and makes sense. If there's something technical that went wrong there, if there's a ball that should have been charged and the shortstop stood back and so therefore the guy beat it out, or if there's a ball that they just didn't use good footwork, or their throw was bad because they didn't plant their feet, whatever it is, a coach could address some of that. If it's just an error that happens, because that's gonna happen in baseball, there's really nothing to address there other than the next practice, maybe I should hit them more ground balls. And so what will happen in a team like that is a ground ball is missed, and that's terrible, and we give up a run, and maybe we even lose the game because of it. But when the pitcher yells at the shortstop in that moment, now we have a totally different situation. It goes beyond that run, beyond that inning, beyond that game, and now the entire dynamic of the entire team is damaged, where trust is broken, where a sense of you're not the authority over me. The next time that pitcher strikes out or makes a mistake, now suddenly the shortstop's on him. And now, much like the disciples in that moment, the grabbing of authority that's not ours, not that player's, now suddenly becomes a part of this dialogue of the team. And so team unity is now broken. And so now, not only is that one mistake made, but it's compounded over and over. The best situation is where the pitcher turns to the shortstop and says, hey, next pitch, you'll get the next one. Don't worry about it. Let's go. Let's get back in this. Now the pitcher is doing the thing that should be done, which is encouraging another player. But when players and even coaches take on authority that's not theirs, then disunity happens, trouble happens. And in the realm of spiritual leadership, a critical aspect of spiritual leadership is knowing our role. What we want to acknowledge is that God ultimately is the sovereign, that any leadership we exhibit is an extension of His created work in us, our image bearing, and our understanding of the divine hierarchy and roles in the realm we're in the workplace, in the home, in the church, on a baseball field, whatever it might be. And then to work within those defined spaces to build up the people around us, maybe even confront the people around us in the right circumstances, but to have the right people do that. And what destroys a leadership structure is with individuals within the structure claim authority that's not theirs. So that's our devotional for this week, having a proper understanding of authority within the realm of leadership in whatever group we're in.